Good evening, Bills Mafia. Cold Front Mafia. How are you all doing? What are your thoughts? What do you think? I'm going to go through all mine, but Lord knows there was a lot going on today, boy. Long awaited, and when I say long awaited, it was less than 48 hours, but because of the situation and the instance that we were all in, that the Bills were in, it seemed like it was less. It seemed like it needed to happen sooner and quicker. Nevertheless, we got our press conference from Brandon Beane, and we're graced with Terry Pegula as well. And I'm going to go through it. Anybody needs to give me, excuse me one second, needs to give me their, thoughts as well. Put it in the chat, please, immediately. Let's talk through this together. It's been it's hard for me to understand where my head is with this, to be honest with you. Listening and watching this press conference this morning, which I didn't actually get to watch the full thing live as it was happening, because of the fact that I actually had to pay the bills and go to work, and there were things that I needed to take care of. However, I paid attention the best I could via paying attention to Twitter, and then I popped in there during lunch and watched 20 or so minutes, and then I listened to the rest of it on my ride home. However, the consensus that most people have, from my understanding in the public eye, or at least in Bills Mafia, is that they're not too thrilled with the reactions from everybody. Based on the reactions from everybody, they're not too thrilled with Pegula and Brandon Beane. So these guys get up on stage, right, as they should, and they immediately, Pegula says his words, and I thought he was done speaking. Pegula gets into, it was my decision. I knew that I was going to let go or relieve Sean McDermott of his role based on the Denver Broncos game, he says. Says this was not leading up to. This was not a decision that he had made prior to immediately following the game. I don't have a quote right here in front of me, but this is me paraphrasing what Terry Pegula says, which is, if I could bring you, meaning all of the press that were in the room, if I could bring you into the locker room immediately following that game, if you could see the reactions of all the players, especially Josh Allen, sobbing in tears. Terry referenced the fact that Josh Allen did not know that he was even there, meaning that Terry was even standing there next to him. And then he said that he actually told Josh Allen that was a catch or something along those lines to try to spruce his spirits maybe a little bit. And that even then Josh Allen did not know that Terry Pegula was there. He used, forget the word, not ignored, but just basically, again, just didn't even realize his presence. I don't think Josh Allen was being rude. I don't think Terry Pegula minded much, but he just used that reference as the reasoning behind why he decided to fire Sean McDermott. Those were his words. That's what he said. He did not say it was anything leading up to that. Now, that is a little odd to me, that he is coming out and admitting that the reason that he fired Sean McDermott on Monday morning was because of the divisional playoff game Saturday late afternoon. I was not ready or prepared for that, if I'm honest. I did not think that Terry Pegula was going to tell us that the reason that Sean McDermott was fired was because of Saturday's outcome and what he had witnessed in the locker room. I was surprised by that. I was. And then he mentioned the fact, I don't have the numbers. He read off of a scroll number, it looked like. He asked all the press that was there if a number, I think it was maybe 5432226. Does anybody understand what that number is? Obviously, no one had a clue what the heck he was talking about. And he said those were our seed. That was our seeding going into each of the last 7 playoff seasons. Somehow he kept on referencing that. I don't want to say somehow, but for some reason, I think he was trying to make the point that even though a lot of the fan base and Bills Mafia has been in a complaining tone and had a complaining frame of reference for the past X amount of months, really, about the roster construction, the wide receiving core, the defense, the line, the whole deal, defensive line. He wanted to bring up the fact that they had a really good go here in the last 7 years as far as their seeding going into the playoffs. And Terry obviously took the stance that the roster construction meant just as much, if not even more, than the coaching when it comes to probably really both, making the playoffs consistently and then producing in said playoffs. He made that abundantly clear. It moved on. He didn't really take a question. Then Brandon Beane got into his a few minutes before questions came. And almost right away, what I would have liked to had seen or heard, I should say, or both, is a little bit more of this is not due to the lack of coaching by Sean McDermott. This is simply we want a refresh and we don't know what else to do to change to give ourselves the chance or opportunity to make it and get to the Super Bowl, and then obviously the ultimate goal to win a Super Bowl. Because that's what Terry said. I mean, he didn't say what I just reiterated, but he did allude to multiple times that the vibe and the feeling in the locker room at the end of that game led him to believe that there was nothing else that the Bills, as their current state, could do to overcome that loss. Said that more than once, multiple times. I'm not saying, just kind of basically just paraphrasing what he said. I'm not really taking a stance as far as thinking that he's not telling the truth with that. I actually do think that he was. What I had noticed throughout, and we'll give some more examples, what I noticed throughout this press conference was that Terry Pegula is really not PR trained, in my opinion. Interrupted Brandon Beane a few times. Had a rough go of getting his complete thought out from time to time. Not to say that he should be some PR, genius. Man doesn't really have to be, but it really felt like I don't think that anything that Terry Pegula said was an actual lie. And I think, or even bending the truth or trying to cover something. I think that Brandon Beane is much better at speaking that way. And again, I'm not saying Brandon Beane was lying when he was up there either, but listen, we all know that there's a way to talk to the press. There's a way to kind of skirt around certain questions. There's a way to make your opinion or your statement sound a little bit less harsh or a little bit kind of what they want to hear, so to speak, versus getting into the nitty gritty of an answer, which you might want to evade if you're Brandon Beane or anyone else for that matter. Excuse me. So, I don't think that Terry Pegula was flubbing anything whatsoever. I think he was giving us a straight shot. Brandon Beane was certainly asked for his opinion on the whole wide receiver issue with WGR Radio and Jeremy earlier in the year when he got on that radio station. This became national news, and didn't really hold back too much with those two guys when they were questioning the wide receiver room and the group and the core and the moves that were not made during the offseason. And, Brandon Beane at that point in his career, his day, his week, whatever it is, had enough, didn't want to hear anymore. And he kind of lashed out a bit, said one or two curse words, which didn't offend me, but obviously did offend some, and made the whole, this isn't fantasy football type statement, which again got a lot of attention. So when they asked him about this statement or this interaction with WGR Radio earlier on in the year, his reaction and comments were along the lines, again, paraphrasing here, I'm so passionate that it came out that way. It wasn't against them. I was trying to stick up for my wide receivers. So he made it seem as if he was not lashing out at these at WGR radio because he was insulted personally. He made it seem as if he was so passionate about his team and his guys that he was sticking up for his wide receivers so much that it came out as if he was personally attacking Jeremy from WGR. And and then he says, I'm just going to add to this, and then he says that he felt bad after that only because he put too much pressure on the wide receivers after that comment. Because of the attention that it got, he thought that the wide receivers had too much pressure on them when he was, sticking, again, quote unquote, sticking up for them. Excuse me. In that interview. What say you? I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are, please. Ethan's coming in the building. Ethan, how are you? Good evening, sir. To me, the whole thing just seemed like a complete blame game on McDermott for everything. Hold on, let me get this out of here. Especially when he brought up the Keon Coleman comment. I think it could have been handled a little better. Okay, do you mean, are you speaking of Pagula's Keon Coleman comment? I'm not sure. Or something that Brandon Beane had said. I'm not sure which one you're referencing, but I will say that if you are referencing what Pagula did when Brandon Beane was about to answer the Keon Coleman question, and he just interjected and said, I'll take this one, and then proceeded to throw Sean McDermott and the coaching staff under the bus. I think I know what you're talking about. So I think that, and well, why don't we get into that then? So he was attempting to try to have his wide receivers backs on the whole WGR deal. That's at least what he said and how he called it. But I don't know how much I buy that. I'm not calling him a liar. I don't think Brandon Beane is just a straight cold-faced liar. I don't know the man, but I don't think that that's who he is. And listen, guys, obviously I could be completely wrong. But I think that was a little truth bending, just trying to make that sound a little bit better than what it was. And because let's be honest, when asked that question, if he were to just say, yeah, listen, these guys were pissing me off and I had a bad day, and I think it's complete bullshit that somebody would ask me about my wide receiver core, what kind of backlash would he get? Wouldn't be great. I think we can all agree on that. It would not be great at all. So that's the way that I think that one went, unfortunately. Now, that being said, sorry about that. That being said, let's talk about the Brandon Beane being interrupted. So Brandon Beane was then also asked about Keon Coleman and the whole situation with Keon Coleman. It appeared to a lot of people that there was a power struggle between Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, and that towards the end here, the cat out of the bag that they were arguing, and it seemed as if both of them were trying to prove their point or sell themselves to Terry Pagula to see which one is going to stay. He's wrong. No, he's wrong. And we did this because he wanted to. No, that was his decision. Keep me. Let him go. That's what people were thinking was happening. Therefore, they thought that Brandon Beane might have thrown Sean McDermott under the bus better than Sean McDermott threw Brandon Beane under the bus. And I kind of smelled that myself. It seemed as if, based on what we can absorb, based on what we see, what we hear, the clips that we see, the news articles that we read, things of that nature, it kind of looked like that for me as well. I mean, I hate saying that, but if I had to peg, if I had, to bet on a situation between all of the possibilities, I was kind of leaning that way. I don't know that I still am. I don't know that I've changed my mind. I can't really make my mind up on this, to be honest with you. After today, it didn't really help at all. So I don't know what to think anymore. Said something on the lines of how McDermott was the only person that really wanted him. I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines. Yes, you're absolutely correct. So speaking of this Keon thing, the question was asked about Keon Coleman and whose decision, and we thought this, we thought that. Can you explain? And immediately, Brandon Beane got up. He kind of leaned into the microphone. He was about to answer however he was going to answer. Terry Pagula, this is the first time Terry spoke after his first comment. He said, I got this one. Let me answer this one. And he goes on to tell everyone that Keon Coleman was pushed by the coaching staff more so than the desire of Brandon Beane to take Keon Coleman, also stating that Keon Coleman had someone in his mind at a higher regard that he would have picked over Keon Coleman had it been up to him solely, and that he was a team guy, team player, so to speak, Brandon Beane, and went with Coleman anyway. These are Terry Pagula's words. So that was a little surprising. I didn't think that he meant to say much at all. I think he just reacted. And like I said earlier, I don't think that Terry Pagula was lying about a single thing that he said. He said, he referred or ended his statement with, I don't know why this guy, pointing to his left, which is where Brandon Beane was sitting. He says, I don't know why this guy got all the heat, but I'm here to give you or tell you the truth. To which case, Keon Coleman was pushed mainly by the coaching staff and not Brandon Beane. I found that very telling. And because of the fact, this might be why I'm kind of torn and in the middle, because of the fact that I don't feel that I know which side I'm on. I don't even think I have to take one, but I don't know what I feel after listening to all this entire press conference. I think it's mainly because of some of the comments that Terry Pagula made. And because of the fact that I don't think he was lying at all. I don't think he's got a PR bone in his body, unless he's just masterclassing all of us. Because of that, I don't really know what to think. And I don't know that my original thought of Brandon Beane is all that true. Or is all that correct? Honest to goodness. So my understanding of the situation is that Brandon Beane was not making those decisions, or the majority of the decisions, all by himself, and that the influence of the coaching staff on the decisions to Brandon Beane, or with Brandon Beane, on draft choices and maybe free agency and things, were more heavily involved or heavily weighted than I originally might have thought. Because I think that almost what it was a Terry Pagula slip up, if you will. I think he messed up. I don't think he meant to do it. I really don't. I think his PR people afterwards are probably like, what are you doing, Terry? Just say your statement and be quiet. He made a few comments, like the interrupting comments. Not that anybody really cares that he interrupted and he wanted to say something. I mean, it's his damn team, but you get what I'm saying. Like, he just kind of interjected himself, and more often than not, it was with things that were kind of I don't want to say out of character, but not needed necessarily. He kept on saying, oh, I'm going to tell you. I'm sorry, I'm kind of scatterbrained because I'm thinking of this whole thing all at once, and I wanted to get on here right away. He also alluded to, somebody had asked him, how long were you thinking, or how long had you had in your own mind that you were going to fire Sean McDermott? And he said, not at all until after the game. Not at all until I got into the locker room and I saw and felt the energy that obviously was not good, but not until I walked in there did I know that I was firing Sean McDermott. So then someone said, okay, so let me ask you a question then. If you would have won this game against Denver and played and gone to play, whoever at that point the winner would have been, we now know that would have been the New England Patriots, would you still have fired Sean McDermott then if they lost in the AFC Championship game? Because obviously you're not going to fire the coach after the division round if he just won it. So would you still going to fire him? He says, I don't want to speculate. But he said it was because of the Denver Broncos game, right? Because of the loss to the Denver Broncos. Later on, when McDermott was giving when Bean was giving his explanation, a quick, brief explanation of the Denver game and this year's playoffs, he said we beat a good Jags team. We went into Denver. We came up against this. We came up short, blah, blah, blah. He was then cut off by Pegula again with Terry saying, because of a bad call. I mean, talking about the catch, the Brandon Cooks catch or no catch. So now he's blaming, this was only minutes after he said it was purely the Denver Broncos loss that caused him to put in his mind that he was going to let McDermott go or relieve him of his duties. Only minutes after that did he then say that the loss was due to a bad call by the referee. So then I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. Okay, so you just said that it's the referee's fault why you lost. It's not your player's fault, assuming that the coaches would be in that mix as well, because you're blaming the ref. You're not blaming anything else other than the ref's call. When just a few minutes ago you said that you let him go because you lost the game. So you believe that you only lost the game because of a bad call by the ref, and that's the reason that you're letting your coach go? So if it's, I'm trying to understand this. Is it the ref lost the game, or the coaches lost the game, or clearly not the players, because he made his point known that the roster construction is not the issue for the Buffalo Bills, hasn't been and probably won't be. I think that's where he's going with this, at least in his mind, right? I'm talking about Terry Pegula's opinion here, not mine necessarily, but that was odd. That was another interjection of a comment that made me at least go, what? But because he was just firing away these comments when the camera wasn't even panned on him because they weren't ready for his reaction, no one had asked him specifically a question. They were going back and forth. Terry, Brandon. So these comments just coming out of left field tell me that I think he doesn't know any better to not tell the truth. So what we heard from him, I think, is actually true. And being that he did refer and reference to the fact that the idea of the roster construction being Brandon Bean, and that his mind is that the roster is championship caliber, coupled with the fact that there are times where when the coaching staff kind of pushed Brandon Bean into making a decision he didn't want to make, those decisions didn't pan out. And I think that actually does have something to do with it. Although I'm kind of contradicting myself, because I did just say that I think he's telling the truth. And he also told us that it was only the Denver Broncos game that caused him to relieve Sean McDermott. So I'm kind of all over the place with this, honestly. I'm not really sure what to say, what to think. It's difficult for me to kind of peg this one, if I'm being honest. Really, really difficult. All right. Let's get into some of these comments here. To me, the whole thing just seemed like a complete blame game on McDermott for everything, especially when he brought up the Keon Coleman comment. I think it could have been handled a little better. I totally agree with you. 100% agree with you. Before we get into some more comments, let me just say this as well while we're on the Keon Coleman thing. Keon Coleman is still on the damn team. He is literally on the roster. He is one of your wide receivers. And the owner was literally sitting there saying, wait a minute now, I'm going to interject myself. All you guys wanted to blame Brandon Bean for that pick, but that was the coaching staff. Last time I checked, if you were going to say that someone shouldn't be blamed for a pick, that usually means that pick was a poor pick. And you come to Brandon Bean's rescue saying that it was a coaching staff to pick Keon Coleman. So don't get mad at Brandon Bean for picking Keon Coleman. Get mad at Sean McDermott. The base line of these statements are Keon Coleman. So if someone's mad at Keon Coleman, he's referring to the fact that he was not a good choice of a draft pick, and the man is still on your football team. Why would you do this to him? I feel like we forgot for a moment. I don't know. I didn't like that at all, to be honest with you. That was kind of weird, if I'm being honest. Kind of weird. But I guess there's nothing we can do about it. But just know that Keon Coleman is probably sitting at home watching this, hearing this, or somebody's texting him saying, yo, dude, the owner just literally torched your ass. Maybe didn't mean it, but that's what he did. Cannot make the man feel good. I don't care if he had those off the field, showing up late, missing meeting issues or not. You don't bury a player in national media when the player's got nothing to do with this, unless you're admitting to everybody that maybe that decision around Keon Coleman actually does have something to do with it. Or maybe you just got so fed up with people thinking that it was Brandon Beane, you love Brandon Beane so much that you just want to change people's minds, so you have to go out there and say something. But you buried your guy, and he's on your team. I thought that was unacceptable. I'd be interested to see how Coleman feels after hearing that. Yeah, exactly my point. You're absolutely correct. One of the few people to take responsibility so far is Josh Allen, because he at least acknowledges turnovers and how he felt about it. Well, yes, of course. And you know what? That's who Josh Allen is. He's going to say it's his fault every day and twice on Sunday, as he always does, right? No matter what, he takes responsibility for that. And he probably always will. Always. And that's the type of guy he is, and that's just what you're going to get from him. But I'd like to – Brandon Beane did allude to at one point, I can take the heat. Those are my draft picks regardless, because later on in the press conference, he did actually get back into the Keon Coleman thing, and he said, we still believe in Keon Coleman here. He probably realized what happened because, again, I put Brandon Beane a little bit higher on the charts as far as a PR understanding, so to speak. He kind of gets it, I think, a little bit more after seeing what we saw. So he probably realized, whoa, we just buried our guy. In our season-ending presser. Maybe we should kind of help ourselves here for a moment. So he went back on later, like I was saying, getting into, we still trust him. He's still part of this team. He's got a lot to give, a lot to offer. We just gotta, bring him in. We gotta be by his side and kind of twist his immaturity and get him to mature a bit. And as an organization, he's taking, responsibility for that. So I like that. I think that absolutely makes complete sense. Might be a little too late, though, if I'm being honest. I don't know what I feel if I'm Keon Coleman. And I hear my guys saying to that, because the one thing Keon Coleman didn't do was go out publicly and start burying the Buffalo Bills or anybody on the Buffalo Bills, anyone in the front office, a teammate, nothing. Keon Coleman acted extremely professionally, even though he had his immature moments. It wasn't public. And even Brandon Beane alluded to the fact that he owned up, manned up, and said, you know what? Yes, I've effed up. I'm going to get on the straight and narrow. I'm going to make those adjustments. So he didn't just, go out of left field and just, blame other people or make lies and excuses. He fessed up, he owned up, he manned up. And Brandon Beane did say that he respected that fact. But now, even though he didn't do anything to you publicly, now you're just going to kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, just shit all over him during the press conference when that press conference had nothing to do with the man. Had to do with Sean McDermott, and you're basically just Sean McDermott. Let's be real. And then who it was your next coach, your next head coach will be. That's what that press conference was about. It was not about Keon Coleman. So just get that straight. Regardless of my thoughts of Keon Coleman, the reality is you decimated your guy in front of the nation, because this is obviously national news. This is probably the most exciting and prolific head coaching vacancy in the NFL because of Josh Allen and because of the fact that you've been to 7 playoffs in a row. Keon should have been left. I mean, the questions about him, I get it. After that, you don't say anything negative about him, man. He's not even, I don't know. If I'm Keon, I'm pissed off. Got to give it to these guys for just figuring out a way to basically bury somebody that's not even around and that didn't deserve it one bit of that. I also don't feel that that there's much that they're going to do to be able to save face when it comes to who could pull which string, who had more power when it comes to making decisions throughout the McDermott Bean era. Because Bean says that even though he's now the president of football operations along with the general manager, and he actually was asked if he's going to hire a general manager, his answer was, I will remain the general manager. So he's literally both. I guess then the only reason that they added this title was so that Bean was the one that gets reported to by the head coach versus Terry Pegula being reported to by both Brandon Bean and the head coach, which is the way that it was with McDermott and Bean. So now, even though he says he's going to be the GM and the president of operations, I think it's mainly just to say that Brandon Bean's the only one that reports to Terry Pegula. I think that's a short way that they did that. Why did they just not change the structure in terms of you report here, I don't know. Would have been easier in my mind than throwing in a wrinkle on your press release when you fire McDermott, saying that Brandon Bean was also promoted. Again, the couth and the reading the room, reading what's around you was extremely poor, and they didn't really talk much about that. No one really grilled them about that. I wish they did. I thought the reporters did a really good job with the questions they asked, so don't get me wrong. They did. They asked the tough questions. They did their darndest to get the answers out of them. But I do wish that someone asked, how much effort or how much trust do you have, or are you paying attention at all to the messages that your teams are putting out there on social media? Because like it or not, social media is an enormous part of any sporting franchise, because that's how all of the fans get their darn information. Whether it's social media or cable television, I guess, right? And the majority of the cable TV shows blast out clips of their broadcasts on social media. So even if it is a broadcast show that's something that you like watching, you pay attention to, you might even get that from social media as well. Clips from said broadcast. I wish someone had asked that. Like, do you realize that you misspelled a word? Do you realize that you edited your press release halfway through the day? Do you realize that you literally only gave Sean McDermott one word, which was admirable, and it was spelled wrong? Do you realize that you didn't even say thank you for 36 hours? Do you realize that people were kind of not happy about that? Terry Pegula came out and said, listen, I don't do the whole social media thing. I have no idea what anybody's saying. I don't watch it. I don't look at it. I have no idea. That's one thing that I'll say, that there's no way in hell that he doesn't know what people are saying online. He's got PR teams upon PR teams. There is no way that Terry Pegula does not know the consensus of what Bills Mafia is saying online at any given moment. Not a freaking clue. And if he doesn't, then he probably ought to, and do it quickly. Then that means he might not realize how embarrassing it looked for that organization over the last 48 hours or so. Regardless of the decision, just how they handled it and what they did and what was posted and all this other stuff, that is not a good look. Not a good look. So I think that they should change that up a bit. If he doesn't know what's going on, he should, and he needs to have someone to tell him what the hell's happening at any given moment when it comes to social media, because that was twisted up like a damn near explosion. That was really bad. I have to admit that. Now, on to the kind of a recap of the entirety of this press conference. I started out, like I said, and this is on record, thinking, man, it really reeks of Brandon Beane being almost a snake, almost snakish. And here they are. It reeked of that to me. It reeked that because of this power struggle and that because they both reported to that man there, Terry Pegula, that it had to be both of them vying for their job. I thought it was a planned relieving of Sean McDermott. Terry swears it's not. I mean, he didn't use those words, but Terry said it's not. He said that multiple times during this press conference, which then kind of throws my entire thought process for a loop. Because leading up into this press conference, like I said, I thought for sure it was planned, because I also questioned the fact that Sean McDermott literally got so upset after that game when he was doing his press conference. He's never cursed. I don't remember him cursing. And then he called the beat writer on the plane ride home from Denver and started complaining about the catch with Brandon Cooks. That is also completely unlike Sean McDermott. It seems as if he was taking flight to try to save himself and save his job. So it's either A, he figured it was coming and maybe no one told him. Maybe it wasn't a conversation or a heads up. Maybe I'm wrong when it comes to that, but he damn knew. Whether it was just a hunch or whatever, the culture change recently, sidebar conversations, or maybe somebody's close enough with him that he kind of gave him like the, hey, bud, this is it, man, even though it didn't come from Terry, right? Somebody had to tell Sean McDermott something, or he had this gut feeling. Sean McDermott does not act the way that he acted after that Denver game. It just simply doesn't happen. And it did. The next coach that goes there will have a hard time, not because of the team, but because of the power struggles that have been mentioned. I think that there's a possibility, Ethan, that it might be harder than we would originally think to fill this vacancy because of the fact that there's a lot of drama going on here. I hope that not to be the case. I do. Terry Pegula did say that Josh Allen had no idea about the firing of Sean McDermott until after the firing actually occurred, and that they had a conversation, or Terry and Josh did privately after the firing, and that he's going to keep the comments from Josh or Josh's opinion on the matter private, which I completely respect. I find that a little weird that Josh Allen doesn't know a move like that before it's made. But they also said that Josh Allen is on this new committee of who will be deciding the new head coach. Brandon Beane first said it, and he said Josh will have some say. He kind of downplayed it a little bit more than Terry did, in my opinion. Terry said he's on the committee. Beane said he's going to be involved a little bit. So, I mean, I don't know. These two guys, there's a part of me up here that there's a part of me that during this looked at those two guys up there and said, do you talk ever? Do you communicate? I mean, this is sarcasm, but there was literally a part of me that said, boys, like, you're not on the same page. You're interrupting each other. You're saying the opposite of what the other one wants you to say, or you're saying something when he doesn't want you to talk at all. It seems as if a couple of things you were on the opposite sides of almost. It was really awkward to me. It was very awkward. Now, we obviously know the thoughts of Pegula on Brandon Beane and what he thinks of him, based both on his promotion, that he's still here, and the fact that Pegula had mentioned multiple times that the roster is as big a reason as any why the Buffalo Bills have been successful in recent years. Hit it. He said you cannot win 5 straight divisional titles. You cannot go to 7 straight years of playoffs. You cannot win, 2 games in the playoffs 3 times and 1 game an additional 4 times, or whatever the numbers were, without having legitimate and I think he said championship-esque. I'm again paraphrasing, but you cannot do all that without having a fantastic roster, which was built by this guy. Obviously referring to Bean. Pagula did say that. And so obviously we know what he thinks of him, but the chemistry while they were up there speaking and addressing everyone, in my opinion, was not all that good. Really. It did not seem as if they had that great of a chemistry together. That could just be because of the fact that Pagula doesn't do this often. Get up on stage, speak to the media, which he was actually asked about as well. And he mentioned the fact that obviously his wife being sick a few years back didn't help the fact of his availability. And then he mentioned that he has only seen his daughter, who's the number 3 ranked tennis player in the world. He's only been able to see 3 of her tennis matches in her career, which sucks. I mean, I get that for sure. But he said, yeah, in the future, a distinct possibility for his availability to increase or go up. Okay. I personally don't blame the guy for not being available to speak to the media if he's got the guy. I mean, that's the guy right there. To me, I don't care. There's owners that are absentee. There's owners that will. I don't need a Jerry Jones in my life if I'm, involved in this Buffalo Bills organization. The general manager's right there. You pay that man, and you empower that man. I would think, right? I don't know how the situation is. I'm not in those walls, but you pay the guy to make hard decisions for you, spend your money, and then bring you hardware or bring you success. That's what happens. I mean, that's how businesses operate. Most owners of, well, maybe not small businesses, but larger businesses are not running the day-to-day and are certainly not the face of the business. That's usually in business not how it works. You pay somebody so you don't have to do anything, and then they just send you checks. But you got to find somebody you trust, of course, and that is good at what they do. And I thought, or I would think that, and especially after today, that's what Pagula thinks of Bean. So I don't care that we don't see Terry Pagula. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think it makes any sense for us to have to. Once in a while, maybe, sure. Do we need Terry Pagula to sit down on one of these chairs and tell us what's going on in the Bills organization all the time? I don't. That's me. I don't blame him at all. I'd rather him go to his daughter's tennis matches if his wife and everybody's healthy. I really don't care. But the question was asked, and that was his answer. Yeah, sure. I can see that in the future. You know what, Terry? I hope not, bro. Just don't come in, blow your coach out, and not have a plan, and then tell us it's because you lost to Denver, but then tell us you lost to Denver because of a bad call. So how are you blaming your coach on a bad call? Just putting two and two together there. And then tell us about whose fault it was that made such a bad decision on one of your draft picks when that said draft pick is still on the damn team. Those are my issues with Terry Pagula. He seemed to be forthright and upfront, but he interjected a couple comments here and there when he wasn't thinking, and those comments actually could lead to repercussions. Now, some will argue the fact that they don't care how Keon Coleman feels and he's horrible, this, that, and the other thing, but that's not the point. He's on the damn football team. He's a part of that business. He works for that guy right there who just shit all over him with a silly comment that he made that he needed to interject himself in and make. That is my issue. I don't care what he says. I don't care whose decision it was to draft Keon. I mean, although it was a great question, I'd like hearing the answer, of course. It's good information, but he just doesn't read the room very well, I guess is my point. He doesn't think 2 steps ahead about, oh, wait, me talking shit about who made the pick of Keon Coleman actually could affect Keon Coleman's mentals, and he's still on my football team. He's one of my employees, and I'm just going to do this in front of the entire world. who knows how many people were watching these things. All in all, you're probably going to get a decent chunk because anybody involved at any level of football, whether they're Buffalo Bills backers or not, are paying attention to this stuff because of the franchise, because of how much attention around the Bills is on the Bills for the last X amount of time. So, and the second most tenured coach in the NFL was just let go. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. I was not happy about the comments about Keon Coleman just purely because of what was said and how they were said. Now, I do take some kind of solace, I guess, in the fact that being said that they still trust. I don't think he said the word trust. He says we still like Keon Coleman. We still think that he's can be a big part of this thing. And then it's our job to develop him and get him out of or break his immaturity tendencies and become more mature on and off the football field. So I hope that bodes true, but there's a small part of me that says because of the fact that Brandon Beane is so good at this PR game, that maybe he was saying something like that literally just to compensate for the lackluster comments that came from Terry Pagula on the same topic. You never know. You just simply never know. But what they didn't do, which I thought that they probably should have, I don't know, in the very beginning was at least say how much Sean McDermott meant and thank you and we love you and the whole deal. This was just, we had to make the decision. We have to try something new. It was pretty short and sweet, and that damn near about it. Damn near about it onto the questions is kind of how it went. But Terry did say it was his decision only, and that it was, again, I'm just going to highlight it, based on the Denver Broncos loss only, and the feeling that he got when he walked into the locker room after that loss, with Josh Allen sobbing, Brandon Cooks crying, Deion Dawkins crying, Josh Allen ignoring Terry, didn't even know he was there because he was in such a, mangled mental state. And at that moment in time, he says, I don't see how we will be able to get over this loss and move forward while getting to a Super Bowl in our current situation. And he said to himself, basically right then, even though he didn't do it, that was on Saturday night, even though he didn't do it until Monday morning, he said right then is when he made the decision to fire Sean McDermott, and that it hadn't changed. Someone even asked a really good question, which was, were you tossing this thing back and forth? Was it a wishy-washy decision? Did you feel yay or nay or yay or nay? Was it up and down? He says, no. He said, that didn't change my mind once, I believe is what he said. Not a single time. So, that's pretty telling too. He saw that, and if he's telling us the truth, which I think he is, I really do, Terry, then that just means he saw that and he goes, done, pretty quick. Did all the other things over the years enter his mind with missed field goals, like he said, and 13 seconds, and now he says the catch? Yeah, absolutely. He basically, in so many words, says all the bad luck and the shitty things that could possibly happen here will happen until we make a move. I think that's basically what he said. In my mind, that's basically what he said. That's the message that I got from it. So here's where we're at, right? He's out. Sean McDermott, he's gone. The offseason now is Brandon Beane's and the new head coach, whoever that may be. Brandon Beane, along with a group of 7 or 8 other people, are on this committee to determine and decide after interviews and things who will be the next head coach. Josh Allen is one of these people on this committee. And then it goes to free agency and the draft at the end of April. There's a lot of work to do. Brandon Beane said it himself. There's a lot of work to do. They have to shave money immediately because they're over the cap. Not the 2026 cap, but they're already over. They're projected at $11 million negative cap space at the moment. So they have to make moves, they have to make adjustments, and it has to start soon, sooner rather than later. I do feel, although Joe Brady, well, let's show you this. Just want to make sure you guys are aware as much as I know. Joe Brady already completed, and here you are, his, whoop, what is going on here? Completed, oh, I got to remove that. There we go. His interview, his first round of interviews with the Buffalo Bills. Now, does this mean that they're going to schedule him for a second? No. Does this mean that he's their first choice, second choice, fourth choice? No, it doesn't mean any of that, I don't believe. But this is the first that they have actually completed. And a lot of people think that this is, and I think I'm actually on this bandwagon myself, to be honest with you. I think that this might be the direction that the Bills end up going. I do. I think that the Bills will actually end up hiring Joe Brady. This is going to change, right? This will probably change, but I think the Bills will end up hiring Joe Brady as their head coach. I think Brian Daboll will come in as the assistant coach, and I think Joe Brady will be the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. Not just because of this, as we see, right? I mean, obviously, it says here we've completed our interview with Joe Brady. I'm just simply saying that I think that this is how this will end. Joe Brady, head coach. Brian Daboll, assistant coach. What is that now? This is somebody. Didn't mean to put that up there. I'm not taking that stance. I'm not agreeing with that guy. I'm just trying to show you this here. So first one is done with him. Brian Daboll scheduled. Brian Daboll also turned down already, I think, the Philadelphia Eagles position. And so did, well, we'll get into that in a moment. We'll get into that in a moment. Here's the other candidates, right? We have a scheduled, well, actually, I don't know if it's scheduled or not. Well, I might as well pull this up too. All right. So Joe Brady, Brian Daboll, like we said, that's who I think is going to be the offensive coordinator. Brian Flores, well, this is old. This is really old. This is a couple days ago because Hafley already signed. Michael Ford potentially, but you can't speak to any team or any coach until their playoff run is over. So the Clint Kubiak, I think, is one of the front runners still. He's obviously with the Seattle Seahawks, so there's a good chance you can't speak to that guy until after the Super Bowl. But Brian Daboll had already come out and told the Eagles, I'm good. And I think I read somewhere that he actually said, and I don't know if this is true or not. I thought that I had read this, but I think that Daboll had almost said that his preference is to come to Buffalo. I think that I read that. I'm going to try to pull this up here. But let's get into some of these first. Man, how can you blame McDermott for a missed kick? Well, it's a great point. It's a great point. I don't know that he didn't come out and actually blame him for the missed kick. But he did mention the fact that the Bills have reached their proverbial playoff wall. Those were Pagula's words. That's when he mentioned the missed field goals, the 13-second game, the catch last year with the 4th and inches being stopped short. Your team not good enough. This is the last year. Make big move for Josh. I mean, I'm not saying – what do you mean? Make a big splash with the head coaching position, Tom Brady? I honestly don't think the team's all that bad, truthfully. I'm sorry to say this, but the Bills owner was so vague in his answers. How can you blame McDermott for having to use practice squad players in the Broncos game? Listen, John, I'm with you there too, dude. Like it was hard. Like I said in the beginning, it was hard to understand where he was coming from. I mean, he was making his statements clear, but it was hard to understand why fire somebody because of what. Listen, it's a gut feeling. He's a tremendous businessman. He's worth, he's extremely rich. He created multiple massive companies. So his gut feeling is what I'm getting at. His gut feeling means something, right? And he should trust that. And most people should. That's kind of what he was alluding to, though. He just said that feeling. He kept on saying to the press in the room, I wish I could bring you into the locker room after the game. Bring you to that point. Like, bring you back in time and sit your ass down in there and have you feel it. Whatever it is. I wish I could have you feel it. It's kind of what he was explaining. Kind of like if you had seen what I'd seen, you'd say the same thing. I don't know if he was begging for acceptance. I don't think he really cares. But that's the point that it seemed he was trying to make. That you just you hear, you feel, you see everything, right? In that locker room. And you would be with me. You would understand. There's no way that we could have done anything else. That's what he was trying to say. But you're right. He certainly can't blame injuries. But what he did, instead of saying that it's not the coach's fault that there were so many injuries, he flipped that and said that because there were so many injuries, how the hell do we still make the run in the playoffs? And that's because our roster was constructed so well and our depth was so deep. That's literally what he said. I mean, I can't, excuse me, I can't argue. He's right. But at the same time, some of that depth also burned us against the Broncos in Darnell Savage and who was the other one that got burned? One play. I think it was Dane Jackson, I believe. He played one snap and gave up a 30-yard touchdown, I believe. Darnell Savage played 3 snaps, gave up a touchdown. Wow. 4 snaps and 2 tutties. How's that for depth? That wasn't brought up. If somebody, I wish somebody would have remembered that. Okay, so Brian Dable is officially part of the Bills head coaching interview process, receiving a request Wednesday. Okay, we knew that. But I want to thought, okay, the Eagles interviewed Dable for their OC job, but they did not appear to be his preferred choice. Okay, I don't see this as being a quote, but if Dable is unable to land the Buffalo head coaching job, he would prefer to end up in Tennessee. Yeah, so he wants this job. He wants to be back in Buffalo. He obviously was already here. Him and Josh Allen had a pretty good connection. Josh Allen had some really gaudy numbers with Brian Dable as OC. No one can argue that. You can't fight that. You can't say that it's untrue. The numbers are out there. Josh Allen was younger, and Josh Allen was a little bit more of a gunslinger at that moment in time. I'll obviously admit that. More interceptions as well, more recklessness, but he put up some huge numbers. Is that what this team needs? I don't know. In my opinion, this team needs smaller tweaks and a little bit of luck, if I'm going to be honest with you. But did it work out for the Sabres? Pagula's gut. Well, I don't know. This year is looking pretty decent, is it not? I'm not the biggest hockey fan in the world, but aren't the Sabres still one of the hottest teams in the NFL? I mean, I know they got off that complete and utter heat stroke that they were on, but aren't the Buffalo Sabres? They're still fourth in the East. And didn't he fire the GM like 3 games into that 10-game win streak? I think you can make the make the case. I don't know. He was only there to protect Bean because the media was going to eat him alive. I don't know. I don't think so. I think he was there because it was his decision, and because he realized the fact that I am the business owner. This was a decision that does not get made by anybody other than the business owner, and the fans deserve to at least hear me say I did it. I can't take much. Like I can't in my good graces go out and say that Pagula doesn't have the respect in mind enough to say that he shouldn't be the one. I would give him that personally. I haven't finished the presser, but Keon getting thrown under the bus and Pagula saying it was a joint pick and wasn't Bean's first option when there's video evidence that kind of makes it feel false. Yeah, that, are you talking about that clip of them, what looks to be like up in a suite at a stadium or something? Is that what you were referring to when they were talking about his 40-yard dash time? They mentioned this multiple times today, and I'm not trying to ruin this for you, Zachary. So if you don't want me to, let me know like quickly and I'll stop. But they said what almost all tandems say, whether it's coach and GM and owner, whatever, in the NFL, which is we all make decisions together. We collaborate. We speak. We talk every day. We don't always agree. We want to bounce ideas off each other. And then ultimately, is it one person's decision? Yes. However, the input from everybody is all okay. Gotcha. No, I'm all for logic. Okay. The input is all warranted from all sides, and then whoever's responsibility it is to make that final say, well, it's on them, but we're collaborating through every large decision that the organization could possibly make. So because of that, I don't know that video means too much, because they're all going to have their thoughts regardless. And if they already made their decision of who they were going to pick, that comment could have, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, that comment could have been, well, we already made our decision. We want this guy here. Now we're just, if that's our decision, then clearly we're hoping that nothing would happen to make him not be available at that slot, right? So that could just be what they were talking about. We don't know. I don't know the whole context, so it's hard to kind of, say much more than that for me. Ethan, Robert Saleh is a coach of Tennessee now, or they're at least finalizing the deal. Did I know that? I don't know if I did know that. Like I said, I was busy all day. Let's see here. That would be a pretty good place. Oh wait, that was yesterday, wasn't it? That was yesterday. I think it was. Yeah, Liam calling around. So we're going to make this real fun for, you know what? I'm going to make this real fun for, yeah. Wow. That's a good role for him, I think. I think it is. Young quarterback. He's a defensive absolute guru. I like that move for Saleh. I hope it's not too quick for him to. Great defensive coordinator. Head coaching job went horrible, although they go horrible for everybody, right? And in green there down in New York. And then really good job defensively, and then right back to it. I don't know, because he had to put up with a lot of injuries this year out there. So I thought he did really well for what he was working with. We went through 3 to 5 coaches before there was a GM. Wait, who are you talking about? Tennessee? I was going to say, Tevin, Dave Adams. Yes. Okay. I was going to say Tennessee. That doesn't sound right, but you're talking about yes. Okay. Yes. Hold on. Let me do Sabres. Okay. So in your mind, then, do you feel that he should have went way like years ago, right? So my understanding and what most people feel is that general manager just pointed. Oh, it's a head coach, the head coach. Ripped through 3 or 4 of them, and then finally Pegula was like, "No, wait a second. It's not you. I mean, it is you. Stop blaming everybody else." Got his ass out, and then they kind of went on a banger. Is that what happened, Zachary? Help me out there and make sure. But I that's my understanding of the situation. I mean, Daniel's going to be the OC of the Chargers. Yes, that much I knew. That's going to be probably fun for him, hopefully. I wish him the best. Also, have you seen the list of people scheduled for interviews in Buffalo? Yeah, so that's what we're just kind of going through, Zachary. McDaniels, I was kind of hoping was going to be our offensive coordinator, truthfully. Although, obviously, that's not going to happen. And they actually alluded to this. Brandon Beane alluded to this earlier, that they have their list of people that they're going to want and get interviews with, right? And then he said, which tells me that they probably have interest in a couple or at least one of these guys. He made mention that some guys that they might want to speak to, they can't speak to until their teams are out of the playoffs. So, that will make a difference. And because of that, if you want to wait for, let's say, a Clint Kubiak from Seattle, well, then before you make a decision, you want to wait until mid-February. Well, then some of these other guys are going to be gone. Joe Brady's been in multiple interviews. Mike McDaniels, who I was hoping for OC, well, he's now locked up, right? If they were going to go after, again, I don't know if they were, but a Robert Saleh, well, he's gone. Like, you can't wait too long before you start talking to these people, or a lot of them will be gone. Brian Flores. You could miss out just by waiting. And I think that will I hope it doesn't, but it could come into play. It could absolutely come into play. All right, here's a buddy of mine on here. Put this up earlier. And just so I don't have to do much research at the moment because I was busy all day. Okay, so we spoke about Joe Brady, Brian Dable. Excuse me. I think almost undeniably you can add Clint Kubiak to this list. Anthony Weaver's an interesting one. I think he's a defensive. Let me just pull this up here. Defensive coordinator right now. And he has, I don't know a tremendous amount about him, but I don't think that I don't know if these guys have the business or the leading men experience enough for the head coaching role. And honestly, I don't even know if Joe Brady's at that point. So I'm not knocking people that just aren't on our team, right? But even Joe Brady needs to prove that. He's gonna have a big microscope if he gets this role, because the one thing that you can be really good at is X's and O's and schemes and personnels. But you have to do that along with managing and leading alpha personalities who are all the best in the world at what they do, not to mention that they're all freakishly enormous and strong and fast. They make 10 times as much money as you potentially, unless you're a seasoned veteran coach with a huge resume. There's a lot of egos, and you got to be able to keep those people grounded, and you got to get them to buy into whatever it is that you're trying to preach, right? So it's a question mark for these new potential new head coaches that have not done that in the past, that have only been coordinators. But we shall see. Oh, here we go. I was watching Stephen A. this morning, and he said he would like to see McDermott go to the Ravens. and beat the Bills in the playoffs. Stephen A has been outspoken. Generally, I would say that I think that Stephen A is just looking for attention when he goes on his rants and he's cursing and yelling. Well, he doesn't really curse, I guess, but I actually tend to agree with what he said here lately about how the Bills approached this situation. And then comments like what I'm assuming he was speaking about today, like you say here, John. I thought that McDermott should go to Baltimore, and I said that the minute he got fired. How would that not be the best place for him? But I heard a lot that he was going to go to Arizona. But I think he should go to Baltimore. They got a great defense. He's a defensive-minded guy. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. They re-signed oh, my word. Mark Andrews, sorry. We got Zay Flowers. Isaiah likely, I think, is leaving, right? He's probably going to get out of there. But it's a pretty good team. It's nothing to scoff at. Longevity, though, long-term, if you're talking about like cap space and draft picks and things, Arizona maybe, and maybe he likes that part of the country, maybe likes the weather. That's a thing to think about. I don't know. But I said the same thing. I thought he should go to Baltimore. Not just to stick it back to the Bills to beat him, but because it would be a great situation for him, and I'd like to see him succeed. I would. But I have not heard anything else about him lately. Well, I say lately. I mean, my gosh, it's been less than 2 days or two and a half days. So Anthony Weaver, defensive coordinator for the Dolphins. Would not be one of my top picks at all. I'd rather, I think, go with someone like Joe Brady over Anthony Weaver. And I'm going to kind of pin all this to Joe Brady because on this list here, my number one pick would be Joe Brady. And this is not all the interviews they're going to conduct here. So let's just keep that in mind. Like I said, my list will change. My mind will change 100 times. But at this very moment, if I'm looking at these 6 individuals, my number one would actually be Joe Brady. Number 2 would probably be Zabel, I think. Yep. Number 3, and I might not make any sense when I say this, would be Lou Anarumo, who's also a defensive coordinator. And originally I wanted to go offensively myself for the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. But at the end of the day, you also have to take the best candidate that's available, right? And we don't know who's going to be available, who's not. So looking at this list, my third would be Anarumo. Actually, you know what? Lou Anarumo might be number 2 for me over Dable for head coach. But if I can get Anarumo and Dable, or even Anarumo and keep Joe Brady, it depends on who. They kind of like tandeming. I don't think that we should completely mess with this offense that much unless you can go out and just completely change your wide receiver core. I don't have an issue with the wide receiver core. I do have an issue with the wide receiver core in the event that the offense gets completely switched up and we go to a 11 personnel 80% of the time and we spread it out and we're dropping back 45, 50 times. Then I don't think that this is the wide receiver core to do that. If Brandon Cooks comes back and Curtis Samuel, so you got Curtis Samuel obviously will be active. You would get McCole Hardman. I mean, you'll have speed threats, but I don't know if you're going to throw 50 times a game to these guys. I mean, I'd rather see some fashion of the offense that we've been running with that heavier personnel, 12 man sets, 13 personnel. You got the best tight end group in football, which may not continue because Dawson Knox has an enormously large contract, and unless he wants to kind of renegotiate that or restructure it, I should say, then we might have some issues. at that tight end position with Dawson Knox, although I don't see Dawson Knox going and playing anywhere else. I think he's as much of a Buffalo guy as almost anybody on that roster, truthfully. So I don't know if I'll see that. But I like Anarumo. I think his personality and his understanding and coming from Indianapolis would be a pretty good fit for the Buffalo Bills. I don't know because I think he's only 30 years old. Let me just make sure if this is who I'm. Yeah. So Grant Udinsky here is 30 years old. I don't know much about him, and I'm not going to lie about that. So I can't really speak much of it. I definitely don't know that he'll have or he can prove to have what it takes in order to run a company, because that's what you're doing. They say it's like a CEO almost, the head coach of a NFL football team. You have to know the ins and outs, the X's and O's, the schemes, the personnels, the film breakdown, every team, your opponents, but then you have to just simply understand how to lead people and navigate through those ups and downs with type A personalities like we just spoke about. So I don't know that a 30-year-old person has enough life experience to do that. Although I'm also a firm believer that no one has experience until given a shot and allowed to try. So I'm not begrudging him from getting that job. I just don't know if the experience, I'd like to be on my favorite team with Josh Allen under the helm. First 8 years not winning a Super Bowl. Anthony was the most interesting one on the list to me. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, that Anthony Lynn was part of Rex Ryan's days here in Buffalo. Yeah, I'm good with Anthony Lynn. That was kind of a mess. Okay. And yeah, he was the assistant to Rex Ryan. I don't know if I want to bring those vibes back into the world here. And I actually don't mind Rex Ryan on ESPN. I think his energy is fantastic. And I always thought that he'd be a guy I'd want to coach or play for, but it just didn't work out well here. And I don't know why you would experiment again with that in this situation. I think you have the ability now to almost take your pick of who you want. And you really need to make a good decision here. And it needs to happen immediately, because this window is not going to be open forever. It's still open, but we don't have a long time. So bringing in someone that was involved with what was considered the laughingstock of the Buffalo Bills with the Rex Ryan era is not my idea of a good decision. And heavily involved. He wasn't just water boy. You didn't see the Jags OC seems interesting in a good way. I don't disagree with you there, Zach. But again, I can't speak too much on him. That Jaguars team obviously scored a lot of points. They were on a heater towards the end of the year. I didn't see much in the one, either from the film that I had watched prior to that Jaguars game, getting ready for the Jaguars game, and then watching the Jaguars-Bills divisional round game, wild card round game. I didn't see much that was overly intriguing from him. I think he's got a solid offense going down there in Jacksonville, but I don't know enough about him, and I don't want to speak about something that I don't know for sure that I can speak, educated on. iPhone John, Baltimore Raiders can build what he built in Buffalo for the Raiders. Talking about McDermott? Yeah, possible. The offensive line is absolutely horrible. Ashton Genty, of course, that's fantastic. Max Crosby wants out, so that would not be good for him. He likes to get after the quarterback, although it hadn't really worked too much, but he also likes to stay light defensively and in coverage. Does he want to start over with a rebuild like that? I don't know. Depends maybe on where he's at in his career. I only say Baltimore because he can run right in and immediately be a playoff contender. I mean, like Pittsburgh, no Tomlin. Who knows Aaron Rodgers? DK Metcalf's complete who knows what, hothead. Defense was not that great. Baltimore, unless Cincy can figure it out, Baltimore can very easily win that division and be in the playoffs next year immediately. Can we say the same about the Raiders or the Cardinals? I don't know. It depends on what he wants, right? Where's he at in his life to where he decides what to do. But I just wish him the best wherever McDermott goes. He hasn't shown up in any of the known scheduled interviews. McD, I think with Brady, we would see an offensive scheme shift, more of a McVay style offense. So people are talking about this a lot, and I've seen quite a few people actually say that, is it reasonable to think that if Joe Brady does indeed get this head coaching job, that we may see Joe Brady actually open shit up and things be almost completely different from what they have been? And I don't know, but I will say, is it possible that Joe Brady actually wants to sling the rock almost like Ken Dorsey, and Sean McDermott was the one that forced him to calm it down? Take your checkdowns, run the football, bubble screens, more conservative, don't turn the thing over, although we ended up turning it over this year way too much. Anyways, that's a different story. But maybe Joe Brady's the up and down the field, baby. Let's roll. Defensive turnovers and throw the rock. I don't know. I've heard that same thing a few times. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something? Joe Brady gets a job, and all of a sudden this team's scoring 40 points a game, throwing the football 40 times. Oh, my gosh. I don't know. Well, you can't forget about James Cook, though. The concept, here's my issue. The concept worked, didn't it? I mean, the spreading the ball out, not having huge number one wide receivers, getting your tight ends involved, running the football, being consistent, staying ahead of the chains when things were right, not having third and longs. It worked. They still scored 28 points a game this year, and they scored 30 or whatever it was last year. They were number one last year, and I think they were number 3 this year in points per game. I mean, it works. We can't argue that. Can we? Can we really argue that? Wide receivers, you like them or not, you cannot say that they didn't score points, because they did. They had a good enough offense to put up more points than anybody except for 2 teams. So I don't know that I can get behind the fact that we need a massive offensive adjustment. I don't think that we can. I know. Let me pull this up here. That's what I'm saying. You're right. Now, look who's on that team, though, right? I'm not talking about Burrow. I'm talking about those receivers. So in order to do that, you would think that we would probably have to have a little bit different of a personnel type. But at the same time, at the level of the NFL, would a general manager and a head coach be willing to sign an offensive coordinator and force him to go completely against everything that's made a name for himself if it wasn't in the cards and he wasn't legitimately that good, right? Like, you go from LSU, like you said, just doing whatever they want in the air, just destroying everything in their path, and then bring them to New York. So it's one of, or I'm sorry, to Buffalo, technically New York. It's one of 2 things. Like, A, he's that good that he can adjust with the type of personnel he has on a football team. Or B, that was more Sean McDermott than anything else, period. Right? Which, this is stuff we don't know, and this is what we didn't really get out of that press conference. Although I will say that maybe what we did get out of that press conference is the fact that Sean McDermott had his hands on more than what we might have actually thought. And maybe there's actually a chance that didn't really do what he wanted to do. He kind of did what Sean McDermott forced him to do. And that, yes, maybe he can just unleash the beast, unleash the LSU beasts in him with, Chase, Jefferson, Burrow. It'll be even more interesting to see what the Bills do with the draft this year as well. That is true. I like this kid, Malachi Tony, out of Miami. And originally, I thought there's no way that he would be available because right now I think we're slated at the 26th pick, 26. But a lot's going to – Bean has already got the bulk, I'm sure, of his scouting done, right? They're going to have workouts. They're going to have the combine, things of that nature. How much effect will the new head coach have on the way they draft? Probably quite a big effect. However, do they decide the head coach based on the head coach's desires and the way that he wants to play football, offensively and defensively? You know, do they only hire somebody that wants to play their style of football, or are they going to draft and deal this offseason with how their head coach wants to play football? Or is it going to be a little bit of the give and take? These are the questions that are leaving us up in the air, and we don't know. We just simply don't know. I would, just to go back to that again, at this very moment, I am in Joe Brady's camp out of the 6 and Dable as the offensive coordinator. I could get behind that at the moment. I could get behind that. And I don't think that I would have too much of an issue if that is how it ends up. Anybody else's thoughts? Anything else that you heard today that I did not see? Because, like I said, I was not only working, which I'm generally working, but I was also, I was also in like a training type seminar. So I had damn near no access whatsoever to my phone or internet, period, which kind of stinks. Anything from you guys? No. So, okay. So, I think it's probably a good time to wrap it up anyways. I just wanted to get on here, like I said, always, like I say always, to give my reactions to big things that are happening. I don't have the ability just yet to be able to do this and react at a given moment. So sometimes my reactions and or updates will be a little bit delayed, but like I said, I always want to give what we can. So recap: Pegula, his decision to fire McDermott was because of the Denver Broncos game and the way that the feelings and the vibes were in the locker room after the game. And that's it. He made his decision right then, didn't change it until Monday morning. This is per Pegula. The coaching staff was more responsible for the signing or the drafting of Keon Coleman than Brandon Beane was, per Pegula. All the while, they're talking shit about Keon Coleman, and Keon Coleman is still on the team. Doesn't make any sense. The new guy will have the same type of relationship that McDermott and Beane had in terms of who's making the decisions. Team effort, marriage is the word that Beane used. Still going to be a marriage. They're going to consult with one another. They're going to talk about everything. They'll push and pull and argue and the whole deal. That came from both Pegula and Beane. He did say he's not going to be hiring a GM. He says, I'm the GM. I'm going to be the general manager and the president of football operations. So everyone will report to him. He then reports to Pegula. Pegula also said that in the future he doesn't see a reason why he won't be more available to the press. To me, doesn't matter if he is or isn't, but I'm just trying to recap you really quick. It was Pegula's decision only to fire Sean McDermott. Josh Allen didn't even know Sean McDermott got fired until after Sean McDermott was fired. So he's not part of that decision to fire Sean McDermott. However, he will be part of the committee of those that have been made up for hiring the next head coach. So he will have his say in that. As far as the heated argument or the heated conversation, I guess, from or with Brandon Beane and Jeremy from WGR Radio. He says that this is Jeremy White I'm talking about from WGR, when he got nasty with him and started saying the fantasy football, this isn't fantasy football, earlier in the year. Beane says in response to the question about that he was so passionate and he believes in his wide receiver group so much that he felt it necessary to come to their savior, so to speak, and come and have their back in that situation. And that, if anything, the only thing he feels bad about is by saying that and it becoming such high-level news that it did, nationally even, that he might have put too much pressure on his wide receivers because of the attention that they were receiving. Him saying how good they were. So, it's a mixed emotions for me today, and I still don't think that Terry Pegula was necessarily lying, but I think Terry Pegula made a lot of things worse. Terry Pegula also thinks that they lost against the Denver Broncos because of a bad call, even though that he said that he fired McDermott because of the Denver Broncos loss. He then said just moments later that they lost against the Broncos because of a bad call on the catch. So that means, I'm just putting two and two together, that kind of tells me that he fired a coach because of a loss due to a bad call. So the ref blew a game, and because of it, you fired your coach. I'm not saying it. That's just like that's literally what he said. So just kind of recapping here. Anyway, appreciate all of you. You know what to do. Oh, a couple more here. Are there any free agents you think the Bills might get? We went through this like 2 nights ago, and at the moment, there's nothing that is catchy, but keep in mind it's playoff football, and if there was anybody, a high-level producer on the football field that was a free agent, they would have gotten picked up for the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like there's no reason that they wouldn't have gotten signed by a team to make this playoff push, whoever that team may be. So we'll see. Things will happen, right? Things will definitely happen, and when that trade window opens up, there might be some of that going on too. I think the Bills need to make those plays. I still think the Bills might, even though Mike McDaniel going to Los Angeles doesn't help this, Jalen Waddle, I think, will still be a Buffalo Bill this offseason. I know we missed on him, and now we'll probably have to overpay for him, but I still think it might work. Well, actually, maybe not now. Maybe not now, because that team is just gonzo with the wind. The only thing I know was Brady had a 2-second interview with the Ravens. Yes, he did. And this is my point. You wait too long for any of these things. Either you wait too long to give someone an offer and somebody else will, or you wait so long because of the other people that you want to speak to are on playoff teams. And if they make the Super Bowl, you can't talk to them until after the Super Bowl. Then you might lose some guys before you even interview with someone. And who knows, maybe you don't even like them. And then you make a desperation hire, potentially. This is just, hypotheticals, but you wait until February 20th or 18th or whatever, and you don't even like the guy, but the dude, your second choice, signed with someone else. Well, now you got to hire somebody you don't like because it's the only one left. It's a possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's a possibility, something to think about. And all this stuff is going through their head. Like, I know they're thinking about this also. I'm not the only person that thinks about that. I'm just saying, like, that's real. Like, what do you do? It's a tough situation to navigate, but maybe you should have had a little bit better plan before you launched the best coach that doesn't have a job at the moment. Again, I'm not saying he didn't deserve to get fired. Something obviously had to change around there, right? If for anything else, then, or for any other reason, then you just got to try something new. If you want to win a Super Bowl, if that's the goal. You want to go to the Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl. Change something up. Shake it up a little bit. If for no other reason, I think that something did have to happen. Whether that was the right thing or not, we'll never know. Anyway, everybody, you know what to do. Thank you for hanging out with us. Subscribe to this channel. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram as well. And hit the notification bell so you can get updates anytime that we are live. We post shorts, so we try to get there almost every day with updates and things that we feel are a hot topic and things that you need to know, or just reactions about something. And we're going to be getting into a lot more. Some pretty exciting news for us here with this old Cold Front Buffalo channel. Although we're not big by any stretch, we are new, and we have some things that are going on almost immediately following the Super Bowl that are pretty exciting, and we're happy about it. So you'll be seeing more of us, which is awesome. But like I said, subscribe. I appreciate all of you, and we shall talk to you soon. Have a great night. Go Bills. Cold Front.